This video is about computations with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, absolute value, and exponents. So first we're going to talk about absolute value. Absolute value is the distance that a number is away from zero, both in the positive and negative directions. Remember that distance is always going to be a positive number. Therefore, the absolute value is always going to be positive. The symbol for the absolute value is 2 straight bars. So in number 1 we have 10, the absolute value of 10, which means that 10 is going to be 10 units away from 0. The absolute value of negative 15 means how many units is negative 15 away from 0? So it's still 15. If I were standing on a number line, I would count 15 spots over to get back to 0. Evaluate the following. Number 3 is the absolute value of 18. So remember, it's always a positive number coming out of the absolute value. So that would be 18. Number 4 is the absolute value of negative 21. So it's always going to be positive coming out of the absolute value. So it's 21. Now, 5 is a little different because it's a negative out front, which means it's negative 1 times the absolute value of 50. So we have negative 1 times the absolute value of 50 is 50. Negative 1 times 50 would get us negative 50. 6, the absolute value of 0 is just going to be 0. Now, in number 7, we have 3 numbers that are inside the absolute value. So we need to combine those first. So 13 minus 3 is 10. 10 plus 5 gets us 15. So we have the absolute negative of the absolute value of 15, which is negative 1 times the absolute value of 15. Remember that the absolute value of 15 has to come out as a positive. So we have negative 1 times 15, which gets us negative 15. Now, in number 9, they're both in separate absolute values. So we're going to do them separate. So we have negative 1 times the absolute value of negative 9. Plus the absolute value of negative 17. So we have negative 1 times 9 plus 17, negative 9 plus 17, which would get us 8. In number 9, we have 81 minus the absolute value of 15 minus 19. So first we need to do what's inside the absolute value. So we would have 81 minus 15 minus 19 gets us negative 4. So we have the absolute value of negative 4. Remember, the absolute value of negative 4 is 4, so we have 81 minus 4, which would get us 77. The other part of this video talks about the order of operations. So remember, the order of operations, we can use PEMDAS. So when you're using the order of operations, an acronym to help us is Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS. So in PEMDAS, P is going to stand for the parentheses or grouping symbols. E stands for the exponents. M is to multiply. D is to divide. A is to add, and S is to subtract. Now, in the past, you might have seen them all written in a straight line. And in this case, we have the M and D stacked on top of each other and the A and S stacked on top of each other. This is because they have the same priority. So we know that to multiply and divide or add and subtract, they have the same priority, which means you're not going to do all the addition first or all the multiplication first. You're going to go from left to right. So let's look at a couple examples with that. So in number 11, we have 18 minus 5 plus 6. So there are no parentheses, there's no exponents, there's no multiply and divide, there's only add and subtract. So we're going to go from left to right. So first we're going to combine the first two numbers. 18 minus 5 would get us 13, and we're going to bring down the plus 6, and then I add those together to get 19. In number 12, there's no parentheses, there's no exponents, there is multiply and divide. So we're going to go from left to right. So the first thing we see is a multiply. 2 times 12 is 24, divided by 3, which would get us 8. Now 13 starts to get a little bit longer. We still have no parentheses or exponents. The first thing that we have in multiply and divide is a division. So we're going to divide first. Everything else stays the same. So we have 5 plus 24 divided by 4 is 6 minus 9 times 3. Now if I look at the problem, the next thing I see is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply this. So I have 5 plus 6 minus 27. Now all I'm left with is adding and subtracting. So again, I go left to right. I have an addition first. So we have 11 minus 27, which would get us negative 16. In number 14, to use order of operations. Remember, PEMDAS, the first letter in the order of operation is parentheses. So we have our parentheses here. So we have 9 minus 4, which gets us 5. So 20 minus 12 divided by 3 plus 5 squared. I'm going to leave the 5 in parentheses because it was a negative number. I need to make sure I am scoring it with a parenthesis. So now the next thing after P is E, which is exponents. So we have 5 squared. So we have 20 minus 12 divided by 3 plus 25. Next is any multiplication and division, which we have one division. 12 divided by negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. So we have 20 minus 4 plus 25. Now that we just have adding and subtracting left, we're going to go from left to right. So first we're going to subtract. 20 minus 4 is 16 plus 25. So when I add those together, we get 41. In the next problem, the first thing that we have is parentheses. So we are going to do the parentheses with the 12 divided by 4. Everything else gets rewritten. So we have 11 plus 3 times 12 divided by 4 is also 3 minus 5 squared times 2 plus 6. Next, we're going to look for any exponents. So we have an exponent here with 5 squared. So we have 11 plus 3 times 3 minus 25 times 2 plus 6. Next, we're going to look for any multiplication or division. So we have two multiplications. We're going to do the first one that we see the left, 3 times 3. So we have 11 plus 9 minus 25 times 2 plus 6. Then we have our other multiplication of negative 25 times 2. So we have 11 plus 9 minus 50 plus 6. Next we have 11 plus 9, which is 20. So we have 20 minus 50 plus 6. Next we can do our subtraction. So that gets us 30 plus 6, which is then 36. In number 16, we don't have parentheses, but we have absolute value bars. So P doesn't always have to stand for parentheses. It can stand for any type of grouping symbol. So I want to do my absolute value first. So when I do this, I have negative 4 minus 6 is negative 10. So we would have 2 minus 3 times the absolute value of negative 10 plus 2 times negative 5 squared. So the absolute value of negative 10 is 10. So we have 2 minus 3 times 10 plus 2 times negative 5 squared. Our next step is going to be the exponent. So negative 5 squared is 25. So we have 2 minus 3 times 10 plus 2 times 25. There's two multiplications. So we're going to do them from left to right. So first we're going to do 3 times 10. So we get 2 minus 30 plus 2 times 25. Our next step is going to be the multiplication of 2 times 25. So we get 2 minus 30 plus 50. Then we're left with adding and subtracting. So again, we go left to right. 2 minus 30 is negative 28 plus 50. When we add those together, we get 22. In 17, we have 1/5 times the quantity of negative 2 squared plus the absolute value of 19 plus 2 minus 3 times negative 12. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with this parenthesis, which has an absolute value in it. So we get 1/5. Negative 2 squared is going to be negative 4. The absolute value of negative 19 is positive 19. And rewrite the rest of the problem. Then I'm going to finish in the parentheses. So negative 4 plus 19 is 15, so we have 1/5 times 15 plus 2 minus 3 times negative 12. Then we're going to multiply. So we have the 1/5 times 15, which is 3. So 3 plus 2 minus 3 times negative 12. So here we have negative 3 times negative 12, which is going to be positive 36. So we have 3 plus 2 plus 36, and then we can add from left to right. So 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 36 would get us 41. In 18 and 19, we have fractions with numerators and denominators that need to be simplified. So in 18, the first thing we see is an exponent, so we are going to square negative 5. So we have negative 3 times 4 over 2 minus 25 times 3. Then we can do multiplication. In this case, because there's a multiplication in the numerator and the denominator, we can do them at the same time. So we get negative 12 over 2 minus 75. 2 minus 75 gets us 73. So we have negative 12 over 73, and negative 12 over 73 does not reduce, so that is our final answer. In 19, the first thing we have is a parenthesis in the numerator, so 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we have 4 squared times 3 over 36 minus 15 plus 3. Next, we have our exponent of 4 squared. So we have 16 times 3 over 36 minus 15 plus 3. We have a multiplication of 16 times 3, which gets us 48. So we have 48 over 36 minus 15 plus 3. Then we can subtract. So we have 48 over, when I subtract this, I get 21 plus 3, which gets us 48 over 24. Now, in this case, our fraction reduces because 48 is divisible by 24, so we would end up with 2. Now, when we evaluated, we had our numbers in place, and we just did our absolute value. Now, in this case, we need to substitute for a variable. So in this case, in 20, we have when x is 4, so we're going to put 4 in its place. Remember when you're substituting to put parentheses around that value? So we have 3 parentheses 4 squared plus 1, and then we're going to do our order of operations. So first we have our 4 squared, and so 4 squared would be 16. So we have 3 times 16 plus 1. Then we are to do our multiplication of 3 times 16, which is 48, plus 1 would get us 49. In 21, we have negative 4 for x, so we're going to put negative 4 in that place. And when I substitute, I have 1 minus 32 divided by negative 4 squared. So negative 4 squared is 16. So we have 1 minus 32 divided by 16. Then we're going to do our division. 32 divided by 16 is 2, so we have 1 minus 2, which gets us negative 1. In 22, we have x is 8. So we're going to put 8 in place of x. So when I rewrite everything, I have 2 parentheses 8 minus 4 close parentheses squared divided by 16 plus 90 divided by 3 squared. So first we're going to do our parentheses. 8 minus 4 is 4. So we have 2 times 4 squared divided by 16 plus 90 divided by 3 squared. So I'm going to do both of my exponents at the same time to save myself a little bit of time. So I get 2 times 16 divided by 16 plus 90 divided by 9. Then I can do my multiplication. So 2 times 16 is 32 divided by 16 plus 90 divided by 9. We can divide 32 divided by 16 is 2 plus 90 divided by 9. 90 divided by 9 is 10. So we have 2 plus 10, which ends with 12. Our last problem, 23, we have 2 times the absolute value of 3x minus 2 plus 6. when x is -4. So we're going to put -4 in place of x. So we have 2 times the absolute value of 3 times 4 minus 2. Close the absolute value plus 6. So if I do this whole absolute value, 3 times 4 is 12. So 12 minus 2, the absolute value, we have 2 out front plus 6. The 12 minus 2 is 10. So 2 times the absolute value of 10 plus 6. The absolute value of 10 is still 10. So 2 times 10 plus 6. We can multiply 2 times 10 is 20. Add 6, we end with 26.